Frank Carter has been driving the interstate highways of America for over 2 decades. 20 years of endless miles, long, lonely nights, and thick black coffee at truck stops. He's seen it all: ferocious blizzards in Wyoming, blistering sandstorms in Utah, and catastrophic accidents he'd rather not remember. Frank is a calm man. He trusts his skills, his reliable truck, and his ability to keep a cool head. He's watched his veteran colleagues succumb to stress and sleep deprivation, but he always believed he was different. However, there's a fear none of them talk about, a shared nightmare, a secret obsession every truck driver experiences. A nightmare of causing a fatal accident, a nightmare of not being able to stop. This nightmare often starts simply. Frank is driving on a familiar highway, maybe I-80 in Nevada or I-10 in Arizona. It's dark. Everything around him is quiet. He hears the steady hum of his truck's engine. He feels a strange sense of peace. And then suddenly a small car appears. It's not moving, it's just stopped right in the middle of the road. Frank slams on the brakes. He yells, trying to slow down the 18-wheeler, but it's too heavy. His truck keeps hurtling forward. He looks in the rearview mirror and he sees the small car getting closer. He sees a woman inside, turning around. Looking right at him, her eyes are wide with terror. Frank screams, trying to swerve. It's no use. His truck won't obey. It continues to plow straight into the car. He feels the impact. The sound of shattering glass, of twisting metal, the woman's scream. It all echoes in his head. He feels the collision, a jolt so powerful his whole body shakes. Then a deadly silence. Frank wakes up, drenched in sweat. He's in a cheap motel room at a roadside truck stop. He hears the rumble of other trucks outside. His heart is pounding. It was just a dream. He didn't cause an accident. He sits up, trying to breathe normally. The nightmare has haunted him for the past 3 years. It has become more frequent, and each time it gets worse. In his dream, he not only feels the impact, but also smells burning rubber and hears the woman's screams. He starts to become obsessed with it. He sleeps very little. He's always afraid that if he sleeps, the nightmare will return. One morning after a sleepless night, Frank decides to drive straight through. He knows it's dangerous, but he'd rather face physical exhaustion than mental fear. He's driving on I-10 in Texas. The road is empty and he feels a strange sense of peace. Suddenly his radio cuts out. The screen turns into static, crackling and hissing. Annoyed, Frank taps on the dashboard. It's no use. Every channel is filled with that eerie sound. A sense of unease creeps into his mind. He remembers what the old drivers used to say: the nightmare can become reality. He turns off the radio and listens. The truck's engine seems louder, but the silence around him feels even heavier. He crests a long hill, his headlights illuminating the road ahead. Frank squints. At the end of the road, about 200 meters away, there's something. It's a small car. It's standing still. Frank slams on the brakes, and that feeling comes back. The feeling of the impact of shattering glass, of the screams. Frank screams, swerving to the left, trying to avoid the car. He sees it. The car is parked right in the middle of the road, with its front end crumpled. He sees a woman in the car. Her head slumped over the steering wheel, a chilling sense of familiarity. Frank stops his truck, his heart pounding. He gets out and runs to the car. He looks inside. The woman is still alive, but she's trapped. "You bastard," she yells. "Why did you hit me?" Frank backs away. He didn't hit her. His truck is just a few meters from her car. Frank looks again. He sees another car, another truck that has stopped behind him. He sees a man get out. And he hears a familiar voice. "Hey, are you okay?" Frank can't speak. He can only stare at the mangled car. It wasn't his fault. Another car had hit her. But in his nightmare, he was the one who caused the accident. Frank returns to his truck. He can't sleep anymore. He can't drive. Every time he passes an empty road, he looks in his rearview mirror. He sees that car and he hears the woman's screams in his head. He knows the nightmare isn't a dream. It's a warning. A warning that he'll never be able to escape. The pressure of the job, the loneliness of the profession, it has all become a haunting obsession, an obsession that will never leave him. Sarah Jensen is used to long drives. At 24, she's a successful software engineer, and these solo cross-country trips are her way of recharging. She loves the feeling of freedom, the quiet of the highway at night, and classic rock songs blaring in the cab. She's driven from New York City to San Francisco, crossing endless prairies and majestic mountain ranges. She trusts her instincts and is always careful, but she's never truly felt the lurking danger that strangers often warn her about. Tonight, she's on her way from Santa Fe to Phoenix. It's 2 a.m. and she's driving on a deserted stretch of Interstate 40 through the desolate lands of New Mexico. She's feeling sleepy and her gas tank is almost empty. When she sees the flickering neon lights of an old truck stop in the distance, she feels a sense of relief. Lone Star, a rusted sign, blinks dimly. She pulls in, parking near the only working gas pump. The desert night air is cold and silent. The smell of diesel, stale coffee, and cigarettes hangs heavy in the air. Most of the truck drivers are asleep, and only a few rigs are idling lazily. Sarah gets out of her car, stretches, and starts pumping gas. The dim streetlights illuminate her face, and she can see her reflection on the gas pump screen. As she's pumping gas, a man emerges from the shadows. He's tall, with an old baseball cap obscuring his face. He's wearing a frayed leather jacket and his hands are greasy. He approaches her. $1, he says, pointing to the meter on the pump. Sarah is startled. She takes a step back. She never pays anyone outside. She always goes inside to pay with a credit card. I'll go inside to pay, she says. The man stares at her and his eyes hold a strange intensity. No, girl. He says, his voice low. No rush. You should go inside and pay, and only pay in there. Sarah feels a sense of unease. She quickly pulls out cash and offers it to him. Here, I have cash, take it. He refuses. He places a hand on her shoulder, gently but with a sense of authority. You need to go inside right now, trust me. There's an urgency in his voice that sends a shiver down Sarah's spine. She looks into his eyes and she sees a strange fear there. He's not a gas attendant, he's a stranger. She doesn't know why, but she trusts him. She nods and hurries inside. He follows her, and when they get inside, he closes the door quickly. He takes a shovel and puts it against the door handle, locking the door. Sarah stands there confused. What's going on? She asks, her voice trembling. The man turns around and he looks her straight in the eye. There's a man in your back seat, he says. I saw him when I was in the restroom. He was lying there with a knife in his hand. Sarah's body freezes. She feels a terrible coldness creeping into her mind. She remembers locking her car door when she got out, but she didn't check the back seat. She didn't think to. She was too confident in her car's safety. The man wasn't a bad guy. He was a hero. He recognized the danger and he saved her. He led her inside and he locked the door so he could deal with the attacker without putting her in danger. Suddenly, the truck stop's alarm blares. Emergency sirens wail and the screams of first responders echo. The police arrive. They pull a man out of the back seat of Sarah's pickup truck. He's a tall man with a knife in his hand. He had been hiding there waiting for her. He had been waiting for her to get back in the car, and he had been waiting for the opportunity to attack her. Sarah stands there staring at her car. She feels a profound coldness in her soul. She almost died. She almost became a victim. And she was saved by a man she thought was a bad guy. She looks at the man. And she feels an immense sense of gratitude. He walks toward her and he places a hand on her shoulder. Girl, he says, always check your back seat. Not everyone is bad, but not everyone is good either. Sarah nods. She can't speak. She can only stand there shaking and look at her car. She knows she'll never be able to forget this moment. She knows she'll never be able to drive alone again. She escaped him, but the fear remains, and she knows. The obsession will never leave her. Sarah has returned home, but she's no longer the independent and confident woman she once was. Every time she passes a truck stop, she looks in her rearview mirror. She looks in the back seat. She looks into the darkness. She no longer trusts her car's safety. She knows that danger can hide anywhere, even in places we think are safe. And she knows that the obsession will never leave her. Jack Riley has been driving on I-80 through the desolate lands of Nevada for over 2 decades. 20 years of endless miles, long, lonely nights, and thick black coffee at truck stops. He's seen it all: ferocious blizzards in Wyoming, blistering sandstorms in Utah, and catastrophic accidents he'd rather not remember. For Jack, these roads are his life, and he believes in tangible things: steel, rubber, and diesel fuel. He's always considered the ghost stories and alien rumors that drivers share at truck stops to be just for fun. A way for them to cope with the loneliness and exhaustion of their profession. Tonight, everything is eerily quiet. The night envelops the road, and the only companion is the headlights of his truck. The dashboard clock reads 1 a.m., and the withered sagebrush flashes past the windows like ghosts. Jack feels tired, and he decides to find a truck stop to rest. He turns on the radio, but there's only static, crackling, and hissing. Annoyed, he turns the radio off. A sudden silence fills the cab, leaving only the steady hum of the truck's engine. As he crests a long hill, his headlights illuminate the road ahead. Jack squints. At the end of the road, about 500 meters away, there's something. It's not a car, not an animal. It's a light. A blue light, not the blue of headlights, but a cold, pulsating blue. It's not moving. It's standing still right on the road, hovering in the air. Jack slows down and his heart pounds. He's never seen anything like it. The light doesn't reflect light from his headlights. It's like a void in space, swallowing everything. Jack rubs his eyes. It's no use. The light is still there. This time it seems bigger and it's moving toward him. He slams on the brakes. His truck stops just about 20 meters from the light. His whole truck shakes. He looks in the rear-view mirror. And he sees a black, round, undefined object hovering in the air. It has no lights, but it emits a cold blue light. The object makes no sound. It just hovers there and it's watching him. A chilling sensation runs down Jack's spine. He feels a strange coldness in the cab even though the air conditioner is off. He feels immense pressure in his ears as if something is sucking the air out of his lungs. He tries to restart the truck, but it's no use. The engine doesn't work. The truck's headlights go out, the radio dies. The entire electrical system of the truck stops working. He's trapped. He's there alone in the middle of the desert with a mysterious object hovering above him. Suddenly, the radio static returns, but it's not the usual hiss. It's a voice, an echoing voice as if it's coming from inside his head. The voice is in English, not Spanish. It's a language he's never heard before, a strange language like clicks, hisses, and whispers. Jack feels a jolt of electricity run down his spine. The object starts to vibrate. It emits a hot, white light. And Jack squints. He sees a beam of white light, like a laser, shooting out from the object. It shines on a spot on the ground and a three-dimensional image appears. It's an image of things he can't recognize. Strange airplanes, people with big eyes, mangled trucks. It's an image of an unimaginable future. Then another beam of light shoots out. It shines into his cab and he feels a terrible pain. He feels as if something is piercing his skin, going straight into his brain. He screams, but no sound comes out. He feels himself being sucked into the object, being pulled out of his seat. Suddenly, everything stops. The object disappears. The truck's engine roars to life. The truck's headlights turn on. The radio works again. Jack sits in his seat, shaking. He looks in the rearview mirror, but he sees nothing. He looks at the dashboard and a strange message appears on the screen. It's not a language, but a series of symbols. Jack can't understand it. He can only sit there, staring at the symbols and feel a profound coldness in his soul. He decides never to tell anyone this story. He knows no one will believe him. He drives to the nearest truck stop, but he can't sleep. He feels a terrible anxiety creeping into his heart. He knows something happened, something changed him. In the following days, Jack becomes a different person. He's no longer the calm driver. He constantly looks in his rearview mirror, afraid of seeing a black object. He can't sleep. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees those three-dimensional images. He hears that strange voice in his head. He starts to become obsessed with it. He starts to lose his mind. One night, while driving on I-80, he sees a blue light. This time, it's not an object. It's a star, a normal star, but Jack can't believe it. He thinks it's the object. He screams. He slams on the brakes and his truck swerves off the road. Jack was never seen again. His truck was found on a desolate road and there was no trace of him. And the drivers who pass through I-80 at night still tell the story of a truck driver who was abducted by an alien object. And they say that on moonless nights you can still see Jack's truck there with a strange message on the screen. Jessica Jess Miller is used to long drives. When she was 19, her old pickup truck was the only thing that got her out of the boring small town where she grew up. Now, at 22, she's a delivery driver for a small company, and these trips have become a part of her life. She's used to the empty highways at night, the well-lit roadside truck stops, and the strangers who come and go. Tonight, she's driving on I-70 in Kansas, heading toward her friend Sarah's house. Sarah lives in a remote rural area about 30 miles from the city. Although she's exhausted after a long day of work, she still wants to get there to see Sarah. She hasn't seen her in months. It's pitch black, the sky is moonless, and the stars are obscured by a thick layer of fog. She hears the steady hum of her pickup truck's engine, and the only companion is the music from the radio. She feels a strange sense of loneliness. A sharp pain in her head forces her to pull into a truck stop. She gets out of her truck and takes a deep breath. The smell of gasoline and cigarettes hangs heavy in the air. She goes inside the truck stop to buy a bottle of water. The place is empty. There's only one man standing at the counter. He's tall, wearing a black hoodie and ripped jeans. He has a spider tattoo on his neck. He stares at her. Jess feels a sense of unease. She quickly grabs a bottle of water and goes to the checkout counter. $1, the clerk says. Jess hands him the money and turns to leave. As she's walking out, she feels a hand on her shoulder. "Hey girl," he says. "No rush, where are you going in such a hurry?" Jess is startled. She turns around and takes a step back. "I just want to go home." He smiles creepily. "Do you want me to go with you? It'll be safer." Jess shakes her head. "No, thank you, I'm fine." She quickly walks outside, gets into her pickup truck, locks the doors and drives away. She looks in the rearview mirror. He's standing at the door, staring at her truck. A shiver runs down her spine. She presses the gas and speeds away. About 15 miles later, Jess looks in the rearview mirror. She sees a black pickup truck following her. She can't see the license plate, but she can see a tall figure inside the truck. Her heart pounds. Is that him? She tries to speed up, but the truck behind her also speeds up. She turns onto a side road, a bumpy dirt road that leads to Sarah's house. The black pickup truck also turns. Jess feels a terrible fear creeping into her mind. She steps on the gas and her pickup truck speeds away, its wheels spinning on the dirt road. She arrives at Sarah's house. She quickly gets out of her truck, runs to the door and knocks hard. "Sarah, Sarah." "Open the door." The door opens and Sarah appears wearing a nightgown. "Jess, what's wrong?" "Someone's following me," Jess says, her voice trembling. "A guy at the truck stop, he followed me here." Sarah looks outside, but she doesn't see anything. "Maybe you're mistaken, Jess." "No, I'm not mistaken," Jess says, and she points to her pickup truck. "I drove so fast, but he still followed me." Sarah looks at Jess's truck and then at the road. "Okay. Come on in." Jess steps inside and Sarah locks the door. The two of them go into the living room. "Tell me what happened," Sarah says. Jess recounts the entire story. Sarah listens, her face pale. "We should call the police," Sarah says. "No," Jess says, "the police won't believe it. He's gone now. They stay up all night and nothing happens." The next morning, Jess has forgotten everything. "Maybe you were right," she tells Sarah. "I must have been mistaken." She says goodbye to Sarah and drives home. As she's driving, she sees a black pickup truck parked on the side of the road. He's standing there, staring at her. Jess steps on the gas and speeds away. Jameson Jamie Clark has spent over 15 years of his life in the driver's seat of an 18-wheeler, traveling the highways and byways of America. He's seen it all, from blinding blizzards in New York, deadly tornadoes in Kansas, to hot, desolate deserts in Nevada. For Jamie, these roads aren't just endless miles, they're a part of his very being. He makes a living by rolling, and he believes in tangible things. Ghosts, spirits. Or the tall tales old drivers tell at truck stops. They're all just a joke, a way for them to cope with the loneliness and exhaustion of the profession. But there's one story that always sends a shiver down Jamie's spine whenever he hears it. It's the story of the ghost in the white dress on Highway I-81 on a deserted stretch of road in Virginia. People say that many years ago, a young woman was murdered and her body was dumped there. Her spirit still lingers. And on moonless nights, she'll appear, walking on the side of the road trying to hitch a ride. The drivers who are brave enough to give her a ride will see her sitting in the passenger seat, silent, until they get close to the place where she died, and then she'll disappear. Jamie always thought it was just a fairy tale, a warning for drivers to never pick up strangers at night. One hot August night, Jamie is driving on I-81, this time. His cargo is an emergency shipment of medical equipment that needs to get to New York as soon as possible. He's been driving for over 10 straight hours, and exhaustion is starting to creep into his every muscle. The dashboard clock reads 2 a.m. The sky is moonless, and only a few faint stars are peeking out from behind the clouds. He turns on the radio, trying to find some music to keep himself awake, but the radio is just static, crackling and hissing like a whimpering animal. He turns the radio off and listens. A sudden silence fills the cab, leaving only the steady hum of the truck's engine and the sound of the wind whistling through the crevices in the doors. As he crests a long hill, his headlights illuminate the road ahead. Jamie squints. At the end of the road, about 200 meters away, there's a figure. He brakes lightly, trying to get a better look. A a young woman. She's walking on the side of the road. Wearing a white dress, her black hair is blowing in the wind. Jamie sighs in relief. Someone's car broke down, he mutters. Being out here in the middle of the night is crazy. He slows down, and as he gets closer, he sees the girl's back is turned to him. Her figure is small and thin. He wants to stop and ask if she needs help, but a sudden sense of unease wells up. There are no houses in this area and no truck stops nearby. No one would be walking here at night. He decides not to stop. Instead, he presses the gas, driving past her. He looks in the right rearview mirror, and for a second, he sees her turn her head. Her face is pale, white as a sheet of paper. Her eyes are sunken, and a streak of dried blood runs down from one corner of her eye. Her lips are cracked, and a grotesque, distorted smile appears on her face. Jamie is startled, and for a second he sees her white dress is torn and a deep, gaping wound is on her abdomen. "Oh my God," Jamie mutters, "just an illusion." He steps hard on the gas, speeding away. His heart pounds, and a wave of nausea rises in his throat. He looks back in the rearview mirror, but he sees nothing. The girl has disappeared. He reassures himself that it was just an illusion, a product of exhaustion and sleep deprivation. About 20 miles later, he pulls into a small truck stop. He wants to rest, but the terrible feeling of anxiety prevents him from closing his eyes. He goes into the restroom and splashes cold water on his face. When he looks in the mirror, he sees a pale, scared face. When he steps out, another truck driver, an older man, is standing next to his truck. "Hey son," the man says. "I saw her." Jamie's body freezes. "Saw what, sir?" he asks, his voice hoarse. "The ghost in the white dress," the man replies, shaking his head. "She only appears to people who are about to have an accident. I've seen her for over 20 years. Every time she appears, a fatal accident happens." Jamie doesn't believe these words. "What are you talking about? There's no ghost. I'm just tired." The man points to Jamie's truck. "Look, she left a message for you." Jamie looks at his cab window. A finger has drawn on the layer of dust. It's a rose made of blood. Jamie's heart stops. The rose is exactly like the rose he saw in the girl's hand when he drove past her. He knows it wasn't an illusion. He knows the stories are real. He knows the ghost didn't just appear to scare him. She wanted him to witness. She wanted him to know that a tragedy happened here, and it will happen again. Jamie can't sleep anymore. He can't continue to drive. He calls his company and says he's quitting. He has given up his truck driving career. He can no longer face the roads, the places he once loved. Every time he passes a deserted road, he looks in his rearview mirror, afraid of seeing the ghost in the white dress. Over a year later, Jamie is still haunted. He can't drive. Every time he sleeps, he dreams of an accident, and he sees himself standing at the scene with a young girl standing next to him. She says nothing. She just looks at him with empty eyes and a distorted smile, and he knows she's still there. She will never leave him. Her haunting has become a part of him. Jack O'Connell has been on the interstate roads of America for over 15 years. His life is a series of endless miles, long, lonely nights in his 18-wheeler, and truck stops crowded with all kinds of gossip. From sunny Florida to the freezing mountains of Colorado. From the dusty highways of Texas to the endless fields of Iowa, he's seen and heard it all. But there's one thing he's always dismissed, like a persistent prank by old drivers: the story of the shadow. "You better be careful, Jack," the old driver Frank said over the satellite phone, his voice as raspy as a truck engine. "Especially on I-80 in Wyoming, that road, it has a soul of its own." Jack just laughed. "What soul, Frank?" "Only the souls of dead bodies from accidents. I believe in physics, in diesel engines, and in full tires. There are no ghosts on the road. You'll see," Frank replied, his voice lowering with a strange seriousness. "It's not a ghost, it's an omen, like a void in space. It'll appear when a deadly accident is about to happen, and it wants you to witness it. That's why they call it the shadow. Hey, I'm a driver. If there's an accident warning, just give me a heads up." "Don't be so spooky with an omen." Jack laughed loudly, but a small sense of unease had already begun to creep into his heart. This trip was a long haul from Chicago to California. It would take almost 40 hours of continuous driving, and Jack had to go through I-80, one of the longest and most isolated highways in the U.S. The streetlights thinned out as he passed Cheyenne, giving way to the thick darkness of the Wyoming wilderness. The only sounds were the wind whistling through the crevices of his truck and the steady hum of the engine. That night, the sky had not a single star. The rolling hills, covered in dust and dry grass, were just faint silhouettes in the truck's headlights. Jack had been driving for over 6 hours without a break. His eyes were starting to feel tired and his head felt heavy. He turned on the radio, trying to find some music to ward off sleepiness, but there was only a faint static and then a strange silence. "Damn it," he muttered, tapping the dashboard. "Are you broken again?" He tried switching to another channel, but all channels were filled with a bizarre sound, a long hiss, like a rusty old train whistle. It wasn't regular static, it had a strange tone, almost like a distorted whisper. Jack turned off the radio. The sudden silence sent a chill down his spine. He took a deep breath. The cold air from the dry Wyoming air seeped into the cab. He looked in the rearview mirror, seeing only a black void, not a single car light behind him. The loneliness became heavier. As he went over a long hill, the headlights of the truck shined forward. He squinted. At the end of the road, about 300 meters away, there was something. It wasn't a person and it wasn't an animal. It was a cloud of black smoke hovering right in the middle of the lane. It had no defined shape, flickering like a veil blown by the wind. "Just an illusion," Jack muttered. "I must be tired." He rubbed his eyes, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He continued to drive, but when he looked again, it was still there. This time it seemed bigger, and it had completely blocked his lane. The black shadow didn't reflect the light from the headlights. It was like a void in space, swallowing everything. It didn't move with the wind, but slowly moved as if it had a will of its own. Jack's heart pounded. He remembered Frank's words. They call it the shadow. It will appear when a fatal accident is about to happen. And you know what the scariest part is? If you see it, it means it wants you to witness it. Jack's whole body went cold. He couldn't take his eyes off the black shadow. His 18-wheeler was hurtling towards it, 100 meters, 50 meters. The black shadow stopped. It had no face or limbs, but Jack could feel it staring at him. It slowly changed, shrinking and stretching like a struggling demon. Then it suddenly lunged into the side of the road, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. Jack almost slammed on the brakes. The truck shook, the tires screeching on the pavement. His heart pounded. And he felt a wave of nausea rise in his throat. He looked in the rearview mirror one more time, but saw nothing, only darkness. He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "It's fine, just tired." He tried to reassure himself, but his voice was trembling. He decided to stop at the nearest truck stop. He wanted to rest, but a terrible feeling of anxiety was creeping into his heart. About 5 miles later, Jack saw flickering lights ahead. At first, it was just a few faint lights, but as he got closer, the number of lights increased. Red, blue, white. Dozens of lights from police cars, ambulances, fire trucks. The entire road was blocked. "An accident," Jack muttered. He quickly pulled over to the side of the road along with dozens of other cars. He got out of his truck, trying to see what was happening. He heard the wailing of ambulance sirens, the shouts of emergency responders, the smell of burning rubber, the pungent smell of gasoline, and the smell of fresh blood mixed in the cold air. This was a major accident. My God. Another truck driver standing near him said, "This is the worst accident I've ever seen." "What happened, man?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. A pickup truck suddenly lost control and crashed straight into a tanker truck, the man replied, shaking his head. "It exploded, taking out a few other cars. I heard a whole family died, including children." Jack's whole body went cold. A family, children. He remembered the black shadow that had lunged into the side of the road just before he got here. He remembered the feeling of fear he felt when he saw it. It wasn't an illusion, it was a warning. A police officer stepped out of the crowd, talking to another driver. The driver of the pickup truck said he tried to swerve to avoid something. He said he saw a black cloud shaped like a person hovering over the road. Jack's whole body trembled. It wasn't an illusion, it was real. And the black shadow didn't just appear, it implied that he didn't act fast enough. It wanted him to witness the consequences. He quietly returned to his truck. The radio was still emitting static, but Jack no longer felt annoyed. He felt a profound coldness in his soul. The loneliness of the empty roads now had a new meaning. It wasn't just loneliness, but also a haunting. He sat in the darkness, and he felt that there was something always following him. An invisible shadow that only he could see. Jack knows he can never escape it. From now on, every time he passes a deserted road at night, He will always look in the rearview mirror, afraid of seeing the shadow behind him, waiting to warn him about an accident, or worse, waiting for him to become the next victim. Jim is a mechanic. He can fix anything, from a rusty old car to a modern truck. For him, vehicles aren't soulless machines. They are living beings with their own souls, their own spirits. He has a special relationship with all the vehicles he repairs. He can feel what they need. After many years as a mechanic, Jim decided to become a truck driver. He bought an old truck, a black Peterbilt with a dark history. He had heard the stories about this truck, about the catastrophic accidents it had caused, but he didn't believe in ghosts or horror stories. He believed in mechanics. He believed that he could fix this truck and turn it into a loyal companion. Jim spent months fixing the truck. He replaced the engine, the transmission, and all the rusted parts. He worked tirelessly until the truck was perfect. The first day Jim drove the truck, he felt something was wrong. The truck didn't run as smoothly as he expected. It was jerky and it made strange sounds as if it was groaning. Jim thought it was a small malfunction and he fixed it. But then the truck started to behave strangely again. It would automatically shut down. And it would automatically accelerate. Jim realized that this truck was not a normal truck. It was possessed by a malicious spirit, a hostile spirit that had killed the previous drivers. Jim didn't panic. He was a mechanic. He knew how to fight. The battle began. Jim tried to regain control of his truck. He used his mechanical knowledge to turn off the engine, but the spirit wouldn't give up. It continued to control the truck. And it forced Jim to get into a race with other ghost trucks. Jim had no other choice. He had to fight. He had to use his strong will to convince the spirit to give up the truck. He talked to the truck as if it were a friend. He told the spirit that he didn't want to fight. He just wanted to drive. In the end, the spirit gave up the truck. The truck returned to normal and Jim won. He was no longer a normal truck driver. He was a mechanic. He had won a battle with a ghost. And he had proven that the connection between a driver and his vehicle can overcome even supernatural forces. Jim returned home. He no longer drives trucks. He went back to being a mechanic, and he respects all the trucks he repairs. He knows that there is a soul in every truck, and he has to respect that. Luke, nicknamed Speed Demon, is a renowned driver on the interstate. He drives a dark red Freightliner Cascadia truck, a powerful machine that he customized to run faster than any other truck. He doesn't believe in speed limits. He believes in the engine, in the tires, and in himself. He's an arrogant man. It was late one night on Interstate 10, a long, straight stretch of road in Arizona, where he always enjoyed unofficial races. The wind was blowing hard, carrying the dust of the desert. Luke hit the gas and his truck sped away like a red monster. He was confident that no one could pass him on this road. Suddenly, a faint headlight appeared behind him. It was an old truck, a green Mack Anthem with faded paint and a lot of rust. Luke sneered. How could such a dilapidated old truck compare to his? He hit the gas and his truck sped away, but the green truck still followed closely. It made no sound, no engine noise, no tire noise. It just glided on the road like a ghost. Luke began to feel a chill. He looked in the rearview mirror and he saw a man sitting in the cab of the green truck. He had no face, just a black shadow with glowing red eyes. He smiled, a smile without warmth, only coldness. "Join us," a hoarse voice echoed on the radio. "You are one of them." Luke was startled. Who are they? The dead. The ones who can't find their way to the other side. Luke understood. The green truck was not a normal truck. It was a ghost truck, and he, a living person, had unintentionally joined a race with the departed souls. The race became dangerous. Luke lost control of his truck, and it was possessed by a hostile spirit. Luke could do nothing. He was trapped. He was forced to participate in this race, a race he could never win. Luke drove for hours, but he couldn't get out. He was stuck in a time loop. He drove past the same stretch of road with the same landmarks and the same odometer readings. He couldn't escape. He was part of this race. Luke eventually accepted his fate. He was no longer a normal truck driver. He was a soul trapped on this road forever, participating in the endless race of spirits. David has always been proud of his efficiency. He's not just a truck driver. He's a strategist, an analyst, an optimizer. David tracks every mile, every gallon of fuel, and every minute of rest. He has a detailed map of truck stops with notes on services, fuel prices, and even the quality of the coffee. He knows which places to go and which to avoid. and the Jericho truck stop, located on a remote road in Wyoming, is a place he always avoids. It's a remote place. The entrance is worn, the sign is old, and the buildings look like they've been abandoned for decades. Many times David has driven past it, and each time he's seen it empty, until tonight. The dashboard clock indicated that David's fuel tank was only at 1/4. A sudden storm hit, and he couldn't continue to move. With no other choice, he decided to turn into the Jericho truck stop for shelter. As he drove in, a strange feeling crept over him. The parking lot was unusually crowded, with dozens of old trucks parked closely together. The dim yellow lights shone on the tired faces of the drivers, but no one was talking. David parked and walked into the main building. The space inside sent a shiver down his spine. Smell of mold and dust hung in the air. A few men and women, presumably drivers, were sitting at tables, but they weren't talking. They just sat there staring into space like forgotten dolls. He walked to the cashier's counter. A tall man with gray hair and an expressionless face was standing there. He didn't move, he didn't blink. David placed a can of soda and a bag of snacks on the counter. "How much?" David asked. The man said nothing. He just picked up a bag of snacks, put it in the scanner, and pointed to the screen that showed the amount. David looked at his hand. His skin was icy cold and pale, without a drop of blood. David took out money to pay, and the man took the money, put it in the drawer, and returned the change mechanically. He didn't say a word, not a single smile. David felt a chill. He went to the restroom to wash his face. He stood in front of an old mirror. As he looked at his reflection, a cold feeling ran down his spine. His image in the mirror didn't match him in the real world. He was wearing a blue jacket, but his reflection was wearing a red jacket. His hair was gray, but in the mirror his hair was still black. He was smiling, but in the mirror he was crying. David panicked. He backed away, staring at the mirror. He knew something was wrong. He wasn't himself. He was in a place where he didn't belong. He ran outside without looking back. He ran to his truck, stepped on the gas, and sped out of the truck stop. He drove away into the night in a state of panic. He looked in the rearview mirror, but saw nothing. Just an empty road in the dark desert. David drove away, never returning to the Jericho truck stop. He had learned a lesson. The roads are not just places to travel. They are living entities with their own secrets, and sometimes you will encounter a place that doesn't exist on the map, and you will have to face what is waiting for you. David has been hauling hazardous cargo for 10 years. For him, every trip is a precise calculation: speed, distance, rest time, and most importantly, weight. His truck, a monstrous mechanical beast, is his livelihood, and its automatic weight check system is his most reliable compass. David's cargo that day was a volatile industrial liquid, extremely sensitive and dangerous. Everything had to be perfect, with no room for even the smallest mistake. David was traveling on Interstate 80, a stretch of road that cuts through a desolate desert where there's only a vast sky and a long, endless horizon. Night fell, and he could feel the cold of the desert seeping into the cabin. Everything was normal until his GPS system suddenly sounded an alarm. A strange symbol appeared on the screen, indicating a way station ahead. David frowned. He had driven this route hundreds of times, and he was sure there was no way station here. He looked at his paper map and didn't see any sign either. However, a small, faint but recognizable sign loomed in the headlights, confirming the way station's existence. David, a man who always follows regulations, couldn't ignore it. He slowed down, changed lanes, and drove onto the road leading to the way station. The scene in front of him sent a chill down his spine. The way station appeared like a ghost in the night. The concrete buildings were crude and old, with a dim yellow light coming from a few light bulbs. There was not a single person, not a single sound. It felt as if time and space had stopped. He drove onto the weighing platform. Everything was quiet, no coordinator, no voice. David looked at the dashboard inside the cabin, where the truck's weight readings began to jump strangely. First it was 80,000 pounds, then 90,000, 100, 000, 50, 000. The readings changed so fast he couldn't read them. It was something he had never seen in his entire career. David decided to get out and check. 4 men in strange, identical gray uniforms appeared from the shadows. They didn't say anything, didn't make eye contact, just gestured with their hands for him to follow. David obeyed, feeling as if he was in a waking nightmare. They led him to a small room full of old machinery. One of them, with a soulless face, handed David a file. The file detailed every shipment David had transported in his entire career. The name of the goods, the weight, the miles driven, even his complaints about lack of sleep. David was startled. He had never shared those things with anyone. Then another man gestured for him to go to a machine. He had to stand on a giant electronic scale, and the machine began to scan his body. He looked at the screen and saw a strange graph, not an indicator of health or physical condition, but something intangible, as if it was scanning his soul. He felt a sense of emptiness envelop him. He no longer knew who he was or where he was. When the inspection process was over, a man gestured for him to leave. David returned to his truck, his mind spinning. He no longer remembered exactly how long he had been there. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 10 hours. He looked at his watch. The time hadn't changed at all. As he drove out of the way station, a loud engine sound behind him startled him. He looked in the rearview mirror but saw nothing, just an empty road in the dark desert. He turned back, but the way station had disappeared, not a single trace, as if it had never existed. David drove away into the night. In a state of panic, he was no longer sure about the road he was on or what was waiting for him ahead. He realized that there are supernatural entities that control the roads existing outside of our world. They know everything about him. They have inspected him. He is just a part of a system, a cog in a machine that he can never fully understand. David completed his delivery, but he never returned to I-80. He changed his route, trying to stay away from the old roads, but sometimes when driving on a new road, he feels a cold chill run down his spine. He sees a small sign again, a strange symbol on the GPS, and he knows that one day he will have to stop again and accept an inspection that he can never escape. Amelia is a truck driver with 15 years of experience. For her, the highway is not a racetrack, but a steady routine. Every 18 hours on the road, she stops, gets enough sleep, and then continues. Everything has a plan, a rule. Her whole world is contained in the cabin of her freightliner, where the steady sound of the engine lulls her to sleep and the smell of strong coffee lingers. It was late one night on Interstate 90. In the desolate wilderness of South Dakota, she was on a normal run covering countless miles to get to Chicago. Around 2 a.m., when fatigue began to creep in, she suddenly noticed a worn-out billboard by the road, the sign for the Blackwood Motel. Although old, it still appeared clearly under the headlights, like a bright spot she had passed countless times. 50 minutes later, a sense of unease crept in. She saw the same billboard again, the same location, the same faded lettering. Amelia muttered a curse, thinking she was experiencing a common highway hallucination. It's a common condition for drivers when a tired brain starts mixing up memories and reality. She decided to reassure herself. She sped up, turned on the radio, and tried to call a few colleagues on the CB radio, but the only reply was silence. The area was deserted. Perhaps no one else was on the same route. She looked at the odometer, 124, 534 miles. Everything was normal. She told herself she was mistaken. However, 15 minutes later, a cold feeling ran down her spine. The Blackwood Motel billboard appeared again. This time it was right by the road, as if it were waiting for her. Amelia shivered, looking straight at the odometer, 124, 534 miles. Nothing had changed. She had driven 15 miles. But the odometer reading hadn't budged. She began to experiment in desperation. She took an exit, drove into a small town, and parked in front of a closed convenience store. She took a picture. Then she got back on the highway. A few minutes later, she found herself back in the exact same spot, right in front of the Blackwood Motel sign. She looked at her phone. The picture was gone. The GPS history was also empty. Fear turned into panic. She hit the gas, pushing her truck to 90 mph, going beyond every speed limit. She called her dispatcher, her voice trembling. "Frank, I'm on I-90. I think something's wrong. I keep passing the same stretch of road." Frank's terrifyingly calm voice replied from the other end, "Amelia, you're in the middle of South Dakota. My system shows you're running a steady 65 mph. Nothing's out of the ordinary. You need a break." Frank's calmness only increased her fear. She wasn't stuck in time. She was stuck in reality. This loop existed only for her. Everyone else still saw her driving on their road, but she was trapped in a loop of her own. Despair gradually replaced fear. After dozens of repetitions, she no longer tried to fight it. She turned off the radio, stopped looking at the clock. She just drove like a soulless corpse. Her truck, a lifeless metal object, was the only thing accompanying her on this ghostly road. She started noticing small details, things she had never seen before. She watched the changing moonlight on the cornfields, the wind swirling dust on the road. She accepted that she was a part of this road and she was no longer in control. And when she had fully accepted it, a miracle happened. On one of the repetitions, she no longer saw the familiar billboard. Instead, another sign appeared. "Welcome to Sioux Falls." It was a large, brightly lit sign, not worn at all. She was out. She was back in her world. Amelia completed her run to Chicago without any further incidents. Frank, her dispatcher, sent an email confirming a perfect trip. Everything was normal, but Amelia never believed it was just a dream caused by a lack of sleep. She never told anyone about it, because now every time she's on the road, she gets a cold feeling running down her spine. She no longer drives alone. She drives with a secret. Gabriel has been a truck driver for over 20 years. In those 20 years, he has covered millions of miles. In those 20 years, he has traveled through countless roads, cities, and desolate lands. He has seen brilliant sunrises, majestic sunsets, ethereal full moon nights, and terrifying snowstorms. But in those 20 years, he has never picked up a hitchhiker. Until today. It was late one night on Interstate 84. The wind howled through the windows and sandstorms swept past the cabin like ghosts. David was driving on a deserted highway in the middle of the desert where there was only a vast sky and an endless horizon. Everything was normal until he saw a figure standing by the side of the road. It was a young woman with long black hair and a white dress. She stood there, motionless like a ghost in the night. Gabriel, a man who always follows the rules, initially didn't want to stop. But there was something in her eyes, a deep sadness that he couldn't resist. He slowed down, rolled down his window, and asked, "Do you need help?" She said nothing, just nodded. She climbed into the truck, sitting in the passenger seat. He looked in the rearview mirror but didn't see her reflection. He shivered, but he tried to reassure himself it must be the lighting. "What's your name?" Gabriel asked. "Alara," she replied, her voice small like a whisper. "I'm Gabriel." "Where are you going?" "I'm going to a place where I can't return," she said, her voice full of a haunting tone. Gabriel felt a chill, but he didn't ask anything else. He just drove in a terrifying silence. Alara sat there looking straight ahead. After a while, she spoke up. "Do you remember that day? The day you were driving in a snowstorm and you collided with another car?" Gabriel was startled. He hadn't told anyone about that accident. It was a secret he had kept for many years. It was an emotional wound he never wanted to touch. I know everything about you, Gabriel," Alara said. "I know you lived a full life until that day, the day you lost everything, the day you lost yourself." Gabriel felt paralyzed. He tried to reply, but couldn't. The old pain surged, the pain of loss, the pain of despair. "You blamed yourself. You lived in obsession and guilt. You thought you could never escape the ghost of the past. You thought you no longer deserved to live." "Enough," Gabriel yelled, stepping on the brakes. "You can run, Gabriel," Alara said, her voice full of compassion. "But you can't run from yourself. You can't run from what happened." Gabriel felt desperate. He had tried to run from his past, but the past was chasing him. He couldn't escape it. "I'm not a ghost," Alara said. "I am your mistakes. I am the burdens you have carried on your shoulders. I am the secrets you have kept in your heart, and I am here to help you find freedom." "How can you help me?" Gabriel asked, his voice full of despair. "You just need to tell me," Alara said. "Tell me about what happened." Gabriel sat there in silence. He looked at Alara and he saw a terrifying image. She, a copy of his mistakes, was smiling. That smile had no judgment, no reproach, only empathy. Gabriel began to tell his story. He talked about the accident, about his mistakes. He talked about the pain, the burdens he had carried on his shoulders. He talked about the secrets he had kept in his heart. Alara listened, not saying a word. She just sat there looking him straight in the eyes. After he finished, he felt a sense of relief, as if the burdens had been lifted. He looked at Alara and he saw her smiling. Her smile was no longer terrifying, but full of serenity. "You have found your way," Alara said. "You are no longer trapped." "Where will you go?" Gabriel asked. "I will return to where I belong." Alara said, "But you will never forget me." Gabriel drove away and he never looked back. He looked in the rearview mirror but didn't see Alara. She had disappeared. Only the long road remained and the vast sky. Gabriel never forgot Alara. She had helped him free himself from his past. He realized that the roads are not just places to travel. They are where the line between the physical and spiritual worlds blurs, and sometimes you will meet a hitchhiker. Life will change forever. Catherine has been a truck driver for over 10 years. She is a strong, independent, and fearless woman. She always believed that the road was a friend she could trust. Late one evening, Catherine received a strange call, a deep, hoarse, emotionless voice. "We have a special shipment for you, high pay, double the normal rate. Do you want to take it?" Catherine was a greedy person. Money had taken her everywhere. "I'll take it." "What's the cargo?" "A shipment of frozen equipment, delivery in the desert." Hearing that, Catherine laughed out loud. The desert. It must be a joke, a misunderstanding. But then the voice sent her a GPS address and a detailed map. She checked the map, Google Maps, any GPS system, but there was nothing. She only saw a road that didn't exist on any map. When Catherine drove to the location, a cold feeling ran down her spine. It was a remote area with only an old warehouse. She walked inside and saw an old truck which looked like it hadn't been used in decades. The roof was rusty, the windows were broken, and the truck smelled of death. Inside the truck was a large box covered in a thick layer of ice. "Your cargo," a voice echoed. Catherine opened the truck door and she saw a man in a black uniform standing there waiting for her. "What is the cargo?" Catherine asked. "A living entity. A living entity." Catherine was startled. "Am I transporting a person?" "No, not a person, an ancient, powerful entity." Catherine shivered, but she couldn't resist. She drove out of the warehouse and she began a journey. It was a strange journey. She couldn't see the roads, the cities. She only saw a road of light sparkling on the desert. This road didn't exist on any map. It was just a stream of light that she was forced to follow. "You can't escape," a voice echoed on the radio. "You are one of them." "Who are they?" Catherine asked. "The possessed. The ones who have become part of the entity." Catherine understood. This entity was not a physical object. It was a powerful spiritual entity capable of possession and reality manipulation. It had taken over Catherine's mind and body, making her its escort. Catherine drove for hours, but she couldn't escape. She was trapped. She was trapped on a road of light that existed between dimensions. Catherine eventually accepted her fate. She was no longer a normal truck driver. She was a part of the entity, a part of the road. She had become an escort. She would drive on the road of light forever, taking this entity wherever it wanted to go. Sarah has been a long-haul truck driver for 12 years. For her, this job is not as romantic as in the movies. It's long nights, quick meals at truck stops, and the familiar loneliness in the truck cabin. She doesn't believe in ghosts or the horror stories that drivers often tell each other. She believes in engines, tires, and caffeine. That night, she was on her way from Denver to St. Louis, driving on Interstate 70, a road in Kansas famous for its incredible straightness and monotony. Night fell and the sparse streetlights were only enough to create a faint streak of light against the pitch-black sky. When the dashboard clock showed 1:30 a.m., a strange feeling crept in. Normally at this hour, the highway would be empty. But today, there was a convoy of trucks appearing behind her, an unusually long convoy. Sarah couldn't see them with her naked eyes, but when she looked in the rearview mirror, she saw them clearly. Dozens of old, blurry trucks like an old oil painting, moving without a sound. At first, she thought it was a hallucination. "I must be tired," she muttered. She gently slapped her face, blinking hard. When she looked back in the mirror, the convoy was still there, trudging along towards her. They made no sound, had no dazzling headlights, only a blurry image. Sarah began to feel a chill. She sped up, trying to get away from them. But when she looked in the mirror, the convoy also sped up. They didn't close the gap, but always kept a certain distance, like following ghosts. Suddenly, a voice echoed on the CB radio, a hoarse voice, like the sound of wind blowing through a dry leaf. "Hello, friend, don't worry, we won't harm you." Sarah was startled. She had turned off the CB radio a long time ago because she didn't like the idle chatter. But now, it had turned on by itself. "Who are you?" she asked. "We are your companions," the hoarse voice replied. "We are also on our way to a place where we can't return. We've been here for a very long time." A cold feeling ran down Sarah's spine. She looked in the rearview mirror and she saw a man in an old truck staring straight at her. His eyes were empty, as if he had been dead for a very long time. He smiled. The smile had no warmth, only coldness. "Do you want to join us?" the voice on the radio asked. "We will never be alone again." "No," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "You can't escape," the hoarse voice replied. We are a part of the road, we are a part of you. Sarah no longer had any doubts, she understood everything. She wasn't the only one, there were others, drivers who had died on this road and they were still continuing their journey. She was a living person, but she was also in their world. Sarah couldn't escape, she no longer tried, she accepted. She drove and the ghost convoy trudged along behind her. She was no longer afraid, she felt a strange feeling and acceptance of fate. When dawn came, the sunlight shone on the windshield. Sarah looked in the rearview mirror and the convoy had disappeared. Only the long road remained and the vast sky. She had escaped. Sarah completed her run, but she never forgot about it. She had changed completely. She was no longer a skeptic. She believed in what had happened. She knew that there are roads that don't belong to the living, and there are departed souls who are still continuing their journey. And she, a living person, had accidentally become a part of that world. David is a long-haul truck driver, and this job has become his life. His truck, a monster of iron and chrome, is his home. The roads, with countless miles etched on the wheels, are his friends. David has traveled on Interstate 75 countless times. He knows every turn, every truck stop, every diner. He knows these roads like the back of his hand. But that night, on a deserted stretch of road in Georgia, everything changed. When the dashboard clock showed almost midnight, a truck identical to his glided past in the next lane. David was momentarily startled. The same type of truck, the same dark red paint faded by sun and wind, even the same small dent on the door that he made 3 years ago. Even more surprisingly, the driver in the cabin also looked uncannily like him. The same salt and pepper hair, the faint scar on his cheekbone, and even the same weary, slightly reclined posture. Except for one thing, the man was smiling, a smile that David hadn't seen on his own face for a long time. A hallucination from lack of sleep, David muttered, shaking his head. He had been driving for too long without a break. He told himself he had to find a truck stop and get some deep sleep. But when he was about to turn off, the other truck also turned. It followed him into the truck stop, parking in an empty lot across from him. The other driver didn't turn to look at him. He just sat there with a mysterious smile on his face. David got out of his truck and went straight to the convenience store. He walked past the window of the other truck, and when he looked in, he saw a terrifying image. He, his copy, was talking to a woman who didn't exist. He was smiling, nodding, and his eyes were full of compassion. It was the look that David hadn't given to anyone ever since he divorced his wife and chose a lonely life on the road. Inside the store, David asked the cashier, "Do you see that red truck across the street? Who is that guy with?" The cashier shrugged. "There's no one. That truck has been parked there for almost an hour. No one has gone in or out." A chill ran down David's spine. He ran to his truck, but when he got there, the other truck had disappeared. Only an oily stain remained on the asphalt. But what was more terrifying, the cashier in the store had seen him. She saw him talking to someone who didn't exist. She saw him go crazy. She had called the police. David drove away in the night in a panic. He started seeing strange things. The signs on the road changed. The buildings he knew had turned into ruins. He was no longer sure about the road he was on. It felt like he was stuck somewhere between reality and illusion. In a small town, he stopped in front of a diner. Inside, an elderly man was sitting alone. David recognized him as a retired colleague. "Hello, David," the man greeted. "It's been a while. Are you still driving trucks?" "Yes," David replied. "It's been 15 years, the other man smiled. "Then you're still young. Do you remember that time you collided with another truck? You were so panicked. That girl helped you get through it." David was surprised. He had never had an accident like that. "What are you talking about?" The man pointed to a photo on the wall, a worn-out photo. David looked at it and he saw himself standing next to a woman. The woman in the photo was smiling. "You and her went on a journey together for a while. You saved her, but in the end you still had to come back here." David's mind was spinning. He didn't know who he was talking to. He didn't even know where he was. He returned to his truck and drove away into the night. He no longer knew where he was going. He just drove, kept driving. After a while he realized he wasn't driving alone. A truck identical to his was in the other lane. David looked in the mirror. The driver in that truck was also looking at him. Two identical faces, two sets of frightened eyes. They drove parallel to each other like two ships heading for a collision. David was no longer afraid. He understood everything. He wasn't the only one. There was another David, a David who had lived a different life, a David who had been happy, who had saved a woman, and who had lived a life he no longer remembered. David continued to drive. He was no longer afraid. He understood that there are roads that exist outside of our world, and sometimes you will encounter a copy of yourself. Ethan Cooper has been driving on the interstate roads of America for 12 years. His life is a series of endless miles, long, lonely nights in his 18-wheeler and familiar truck stops. He has witnessed it all, from the bizarre blizzards in Colorado to the stinging sandstorms in Nevada. He is proud of himself, of always staying alert and cautious. He has a family in Phoenix, his wife, Sarah, and his young daughter, Lily. Every trip is a time he leaves them, but also a time he knows he's working to give them a better life. Ethan's alertness was what saved him. As his truck rolled over a long hill on Interstate 40 on a deserted stretch of road in New Mexico, a blue minivan suddenly lost control. It might have been a deer crossing the road, or maybe the driver fell asleep at the wheel. The car wobbled, then spun on the road, crashing into a steel guardrail, the sound of metal crashing. Tires screeching and a loud engine explosion echoed in the cold night air. Ethan had managed to brake in time. His truck stopped just a few dozen meters from the accident scene. He rushed out of his truck. The pungent smell of burning rubber and gasoline filled the air. The minivan was completely deformed, lying in the middle of the road with the front end crushed. The headlights of his truck shone directly on the car, turning it into a gruesome image etched into his retina. He saw a man and a woman trapped in the front seats, unconscious. But what made his heart stop was the sight in the back seat. The window was shattered, and he saw a rag doll, a green dinosaur toy, lying on the road. He knew he wasn't alone. At the back of the car on the road were two small, motionless figures. One child and another child. Ethan didn't dare to get closer. He stood there, trembling. He heard the wailing of police sirens in the distance. The sound of ambulances getting closer. He felt helpless. He could only stand there like a silent witness, staring at a tragedy he couldn't prevent. Ethan stayed there until the police arrived. He gave his statement mechanically, like a sleepwalker. He couldn't stop thinking about the two children. Were they siblings? Where were they going? Why were they traveling at night? Every question led to a heartbreaking conclusion, and that pain gnawed at his mind. Back on the road. Ethan was a different person. He was no longer a calm driver. He constantly looked in the rearview mirror, afraid of seeing a blue minivan. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the image of the two children. Although he couldn't see their faces clearly, he could imagine a blonde boy and a girl in a pink dress. He heard their laughter, the innocent laughter of children, but in his mind that laughter turned into a stifled cry for help. A week after the accident, Ethan was driving on a deserted road in Arizona, where giant cacti rose under a starry sky. He was so tired, and he knew he needed to rest. He looked in the right rearview mirror, and for a second he saw a shadow. It wasn't a car, but the image of a child standing by the side of the road, pointing at his truck. Ethan rubbed his eyes. The shadow disappeared. "You're going crazy, Cooper," he told himself. "Go to sleep." He pulled into a truck stop and fell asleep immediately, but he dreamed that he was at the accident scene. And the two children were standing next to the deformed car. They weren't crying, they were just looking at him. Their eyes were empty, but full of an inexpressible sadness. They looked at him, and then they looked at their own car. It was a nightmare. Ethan woke up, soaked in sweat. He felt a strange coldness in the cab, even though the air conditioning was off. He looked down at the seat next to him, and a shiver ran down his spine. Lying on the seat was a small toy, a red toy truck. It wasn't his. He didn't have a child with him. His heart pounded. He quickly took the car and threw it out the window, but he could never forget the cold feeling of it when he held it in his hand. In the days that followed, Ethan's haunting got worse. The laughter of children began to echo in the cab, even when the radio was off and no one was around. The laughter seemed distant, but it was almost as if it was coming from inside his own head. At times, he heard whispers, like two children talking to each other. "Daddy, Mommy." Ethan screamed. He grabbed the steering wheel and sped off, trying to drive as fast as he could. One night, while driving on I-15 in Nevada, he saw a figure standing by the side of the road. This time, it wasn't a blurry shadow. It was a child in a pink dress. The girl stood there, clenching her hands, looking straight at him. Ethan slammed on the brakes. He stopped, and his heart pounded like a drum. He looked in the rearview mirror and he saw the boy standing right behind his truck. The boy just looked at him with empty eyes. Ethan was terrified. He couldn't move. He could only stare into the mirror at the image of the boy. Suddenly, the boy raised his hand, pointing at the truck. A loud screech came from the front. Ethan was startled and looked straight ahead. A pickup truck suddenly lost control and crashed straight into a car coming from the opposite direction. The impact was so strong that the car was thrown far away, spinning in the air before falling. The pickup truck exploded. Ethan stood there and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The smell of smoke, gasoline, and tragedy returned once again. He became a witness again. He looked in the rearview mirror, but the two children had disappeared. Only darkness remained. He knew they had warned him. They wanted him to witness another accident. Ethan ended his trip. He quit being a truck driver. He could no longer drive. He couldn't sleep. Every time he passed a deserted road. He looked in the rearview mirror. He no longer saw them there, but he knew they were still there, right behind him. The fear had become a part of him. The tragedy on the road had left an indelible scar, and every night in his sleep he heard the laughter of the two children, and he saw himself standing on a dark road, all alone in a deformed car, and he knew the haunting would never leave him. Joe Miller has been a truck driver for over 20 years. 20 years of endless miles, of long, lonely nights under a dim moon, and of strong, thick coffee and roadside truck stops. He has driven through every state in the U.S., from the sandy beaches of Florida to the snow-covered mountains of Colorado. For Joe, his 18-wheeler is not just a means of making a living, but also a mobile home, a steel fortress against loneliness. He has heard all the ghost stories that old drivers pass around on the CB radio. Stories about ghost hitchhikers, about spooky driverless cars, about mythical creatures living in the wild forests. Joe always scoffed and dismissed them. He believed in tangible things, things he could touch, things he could see, the roar of the engine, the smell of diesel, and the bone-deep fatigue after a long day. He had seen enough to no longer believe in ghosts, catastrophic accidents. Crazy people with knives at truck stops or snowstorms that could swallow an entire truck. He always thought that people's greatest fear was other people. On a cold October night, Joe was driving on Highway 281 in Kansas. In front of him were endless fields of dry corn stretching to the horizon. The sky was moonless, with only faint stars glimmering behind a thin layer of fog. The feeling of loneliness rose stronger than ever. His cargo this time was a frozen shipment from a farm in Texas, consisting of dozens of pre-processed and packaged pigs. This was not a glamorous shipment, but it provided a steady income. He had been driving for over 10 hours continuously, and fatigue began to creep into every muscle. Joe decided to pull into a small empty lot by the side of the road to catch a nap. The place was far from any town, with only the sound of wind rustling through the weeds and the chirping of insects. He turned off the engine, and a sudden silence enveloped the cab, with only the sound of his own heart beating loudly. He leaned back in his seat, trying to fall asleep, but a strange sense of unease kept him from closing his eyes. He felt like someone was watching him. Joe opened his eyes, looked in the rearview mirror, but saw nothing but darkness. He shook his head, telling himself it was just a hallucination. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right and was nearby. A strange, putrid smell suddenly assaulted his nose. It wasn't the smell of a dead animal, but something else, a combination of mud, dried blood, and something sweet and rotten. Joe grimaced. He took a deep breath. The stench became even more pungent. He heard a sound, a small sound like a gentle scratching on the side of the truck. His heart pounded. It couldn't be an animal. The scratching sound was too light, too steady. It sounded like fingernails scratching on metal. Joe gripped the folding knife in his glove compartment. His hands soaked in sweat. Then the sound stopped. A deathly silence enveloped everything. The wind stopped blowing and the insects also went quiet. Everything became frighteningly still, and then he heard it, a hoarse, vile screech like that of an animal. The screech was almost a laugh, but it was distorted, full of terror. It wasn't the laughter of a human. Joe heard a loud sound from the back of the trailer. Bang, 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 as if something very heavy was hitting the side of the truck. Joe crouched down, looking through the left window into the rearview mirror. He saw a shadow that moved very quickly, tall and skinny. It didn't look like a bear, nor did it look like a wolf. Under the dim light of the taillight, he saw a strange creature, hairy and somewhat resembling a man, but with a large, flat head and a long snout. It had glowing red eyes and long, black claws. Its arms were unusually long, and it was scratching at the back door of the trailer. Joe couldn't breathe. He had seen what he always thought was a tall tale, a monster, a creature from a nightmare. His breathing became labored, and he felt a wave of nausea rise in his throat. The door of the trailer was torn open, the sound of metal being ripped apart, a high-pitched screech. Joe didn't dare to look. He closed his eyes. He heard the sound of something very heavy being pulled out of the truck, and then the sound of gnawing, a growl, followed by the cackling laughter of a monster. Joe couldn't take it anymore. He turned on the engine, hit the gas, and sped off, not caring if he had to turn back or not. The tires screeched on the road. He only heard the roar of the engine. He looked in the rearview mirror but saw nothing. He saw another truck in the distance, and he felt a little relieved. When he arrived at the nearest truck stop, Joe almost collapsed. He got out of the truck and ran to check his trailer. The back door was ripped open, and the chain was broken. The pungent smell of blood and fresh meat filled the air. One of the pigs was gone. Bloodstains were spread on the floor, and there were deep claw marks on the metal. Joe called the police. When they arrived and saw the scene, they shook their heads, suggesting it was probably a bear or a coyote. Joe tried to tell them about the monster, but they just looked at him with pity. "You're just overtired, Miller," one of them said. "Don't worry, we'll file a report." Since that night, Joe hasn't been able to sleep. He is constantly haunted and is no longer the calm driver he used to be. Every night he checks his rearview mirror. When he hears the wind howl, he imagines it's the monster's claws. When he hears his own engine, he thinks it's its gruesome laughter. He knows the monster is still out there. It's waiting for him. The loneliness of the road is no longer just lonely. It has become a terror that he will encounter the monster again. And this time it won't just steal a dead pig, but his very life. He knows this haunting will never leave him. Gabriel has been a truck driver for over 20 years. He is a king on the highway, a practical and tough man. He believes in the roads, in the engines, and in the numbers on the dashboard. He doesn't believe in ghosts or the horror stories that other drivers often tell each other. He only believes in money and cargo. Late one evening, while sitting at a roadside cafe, Gabriel received a strange call, a deep, hoarse, emotionless voice. "We have a special shipment for you, high pay, double the normal rate. Do you want to take it?" Gabriel is a greedy man. Money has taken him everywhere. "I'll take it. What's the cargo?" "The beginning of a journey, delivery at the Blackwood Cemetery." Hearing that, Gabriel laughed out loud. The cemetery, that's a joke, a misunderstanding. But then, the voice sent him a GPS address and a detailed map. He checked the map on Google Maps on any GPS system, but there was nothing. He only saw an old cemetery on a road that didn't exist. When Gabriel drove there, a cold feeling ran down his spine. It was an ancient cemetery with graves dating back to the 1800. The wind blew through the gravestones, creating a strange sound. Gabriel stopped his truck and saw a man in a black uniform standing by the side of the road, waiting for him. "You've arrived," the man said, his voice icy cold. "Sign here." Gabriel looked at the contract. It was written in a language he had never seen before. A language that didn't belong in this world, a kind of language of the other world, a kind of language of the dead. He shivered, but he couldn't resist. He signed the contract, and the man gave him a key. "The key to your truck." "What truck?" Gabriel asked. "The truck that has been prepared for you over there." Gabriel turned around. It was an old truck, which looked like it hadn't been used for decades. The roof was rusty. The windows were broken, and the truck smelled of death. Gabriel shook his head. He couldn't drive this truck. "It's your truck," the man said. "You signed the contract." Gabriel climbed into the truck. He started the engine, and a terrifying engine sound echoed. He drove out of the cemetery, and he began a journey. It was a strange journey. He couldn't see the roads, the cities. He only saw ghosts gliding past. He saw dead people trying to find their way to the other side. Gabriel drove for hours, but he didn't see anything. His odometer didn't budge. Time didn't pass either. He was trapped. He was trapped in a time loop. "You can't escape," a voice echoed on the radio. "You are one of them." Gabriel was startled. Who are they? The dead, the ones who can't find their way to the other side. Gabriel understood. He wasn't a normal truck driver. He was a ferryman taking souls from the world of the living to the other side. It was a permanent job that he had unintentionally accepted. Gabriel returned to the cemetery. He saw the man in the black uniform standing there waiting for him. "You have completed your shipment," the man said. "Now you are a part of us. You will drive on the roads that have no name. You will take the souls to where they belong." Gabriel has accepted his fate. He no longer believes in what he sees or hears. He believes in secrets, in things that cannot be explained. He has become a part of the other world. He is a ferryman.